I remember my first week and I got on the scale and like nothing had changed. And I'm like, ah, like nothing is working. Why am I going through this? But it does take a while. But there's so many more effects for the GLPs. It slows down the gastric movement so that you feel full longer. I know one of the great side effects that they weren't reporting at first, which was something that I experienced, was decreasing of food noise. Myself, how obsessed I was with food and how I was constantly thinking about food until I tried that medicine, and all of a sudden it was like, wait, like my brain went quiet.
Thank you so much for joining us on another awesome episode of Bioenergetics Beat. I'm Heather Gray, a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and certified bioenergetic practitioner, and today is brought to you by Nikki, Unleash the Wellness Within. It's a non-invasive, optimized wellness. It's a wearable device that puts frequency better based life in your hands and on your wrist. Don't forget, stick to the very end because we have a wonderful giveaway that you're not going to want to miss out on. But trust me, I know I say this every episode, but this is a personal friend of mine, and we've had her on the show once before, and we always have so much fun. You're not going to want to miss one word that my next guest has to say, so you're going to want to stick to the very end anyway. But without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. Yay! To the
Yay!
show.
Thank you so much, Heather, for having me. I'm so excited to be talking to you.
Absolutely. It's like the only time we get to catch up these
I
days. Because I
know.
don't go to Mindshare right now, but this is the last one. Are you going this year?
I unfortunately cannot make it
Yeah.
because it just falls during when I'm finishing up my integrative fellowship, and it's like the same week. So it's like, I have to say that's a hard thing, but there's some times in life when you're just going to be like, I can't make everything.
Yeah,
Just can't do
can't be
it.
everywhere. Yeah, absolutely. And that's really something coming from you because you do have a tendency to like have your hands in so many different things at once. So for you to say, I can't do it, that really means you can't do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
But so tell us a little bit, because I said we've had you on the show once before, but just in case somebody did hear that episode, give us a little bit of background on yourself, why functional medicine, why should we care? And then, we'll talk about that for a little bit, then we'll pause real quick for a commercial. When we come back, we're going to dive deeper into the nuts and bolts of this talk about peptides, one of my favorite topics right now. So tell us a little bit about your background and who are you and why should we care?
Yeah. So I'm Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. I'm the first board certified female urogynecologist in the United States. So that's pelvic reconstruction. But I'm a little bit more than that in that right now I have four board certifications and I'm working on my fifth board certification.
Good grief.
And the reason why people are like, why? And I think it is, I went through traditional medicine training. And after coming out of residency, I realized, well, actually, when you come out of residency, you think you know everything because they've just been training you for like how many bazillions of years and you think you know everything. But as I went through medicine and started seeing patients, I realized the longer I was in medicine, the less I knew, being that traditional medicine is just, and I'm sure this comes up many times in your conversations, it's geared towards symptoms and not really fixing the problem. So when I got out, I realized that the tools I was given with traditional surgeries and medicine was just a band-aid and covering up things and not fixing the problem. So that's where I ended up going down this rabbit hole of like, all right, I want to really help people and reverse their situations. Like my job is so that they shouldn't have to see me anymore. Like it shouldn't be like you need to come in all the time. Like let's get you fixed, let's get you maintained, and then like of course, like I want people to stay with me for maintenance, but the ultimate thing is for that purpose and not for them coming in just to get another pill or another surgery. So that's how I ended
Can
up
I get an amen?
yeah, that's how I ended up going into the functional and integrative medicine and going down that rabbit hole. And I just love all the things I've been learning and doing, and um, probably been doing this unofficially for, oh God, it seems almost like it's probably like 17 years. And then I joke, was it the Beyonce song? If you like it, if you love it, put a ring on it, whatever it is. So I was like, I better make this official. And I'm wrapping up my integrative medicine fellowship with Dr. Andrew Weil in the
Oh,
in the
nice.
fall. So yeah, I was like, you know what, I need to actually get that official stamp of approval other than the fact that I've just been doing it for the last couple, decades. So,
That's too funny. Who else here too? The minute she said pelvic floor, you started doing your Kegels,
I
right? Like,
know.
like I forget that that's what you do, and then you get around somebody. Like when I get around a chiropractor too, and I automatically find myself
I
sitting up
know.
straighter, right? It's just that wonderful reminder. But like, why pelvic floor? What was it about life, your life, anything that was coming up that made you go down that route?
You know what? That's actually really funny because I definitely did not go to medical school to look at vaginas all day long. Because people are like, why did you become a gynecologist? And like, that's the last thing on your mind. I went to medical school and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I liked medicine and I just kind of went through my rotations and decided what I liked. I actually wanted to do pediatrics when I started. Um, but unfortunately, I found dealing with the parents to be very frustrating. And then I really was drawn to the surgical subspecialties, and I liked OBGYN and I liked general surgery, and I couldn't decide. And I actually went down the road of going through general surgery first. Got halfway through that, and I realized um, the problem with general surgery is they're like body mechanics. They just get in there, fix the problem, and get out. And I was the one walking around doing rounds, and I'm like, so how do you feel now that your gallbladder is out? How do you feel like your appendix is out? Like, I wanted to connect with the patients. So I ended up switching into OBGYN because in OBGYN you could have more of a relationship with the patient and see them every year. And, it wasn't like you saw them like once, fixed tightened up a screw or something and then sent them on their way. And then even then the delivering of the babies was fun, but I don't deal well with lack of sleep, and babies come at all times of the night. I just
Amen.
did not deal well with lack of sleep. And so I didn't even know that urogynecology existed as a field until my senior year of residency. And I did a rotation. And I was like, this is perfect. It's all the surgery, what I liked. I had the relationship with the patients. I'm like, this is absolutely perfect. So I went and then I did a rotation or my fellowship in that. And there's only 1,500 urogynecologists in the United States. And even funnier when I came home to tell my mom, I'm like, I'm gonna do 2 more years of training in urogynecology, and she was like, "What is that?" And it was like, she's like, "Is that like Euro Disney? Is it like fancy, like European, like fancy gynecology?" And I'm like, no, it's like urology, so having to deal with the bladder, and gynecology, having to deal with the vagina, and then we also actually deal with the rectum. It's dealing with all the pelvic organs. So yeah, it's a combination of everything.
Yeah, Euro Disney, that's hilarious with your mom. Like it's gynecology with a pomp and circumstance. No. So how long did you do that before you kind of went into the functional medicine world, and how did those two things kind of tie together?
Yeah, I think I was pretty very early in my career. I would say I probably practiced traditional urogynecology for maybe like 4 years. And then I just started to say, like, okay, things weren't fixing the problem.
Mm.
And in fellowship, you don't see that because in fellowship, you're like, you never see the patients again. You're doing surgery on them and you're not really necessarily following up. And now in the office, I'm following up and I'm going, wait a minute, the things I just didn't make a difference. So, especially with like urinary tract infections, like people get into this loop where they get a urinary tract infection and they go on antibiotics and they may be good for a couple weeks. So, you're hopefully taking care of them totally. But most of the time, they get in this loop where they're good for a couple weeks and then it comes back. And then you put them on antibiotics and it's good for a couple weeks and then it's back. And I was like, why is this happening? I mean, now, fast forward, I realize because we're throwing off their gut microbiome with all the antibiotics, and they're just reseeding the vagina and then therefore the bladder with these bad bacteria that's starting in their gut. So it was kind of, I mean, it didn't happen that quickly. It probably took me a good 5 to 8 years to finally get to the point to figure that out because I didn't even know functional or integrative medicine even existed at that time. And so it was just kind of as I was looking for answers. And I luckily had a population of patients that they rather take 20 different supplements and essential oils than, God forbid, take one medicine. So they were the ones that really pushed me into this. And even at one of my patients, like, well, why can't you test my gut? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she was the one who brought this up. So Yeah, so I really
Oh,
got
God bless
lucky.
her. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, this is a great segue. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to jump into the topic of today, which is peptides. What are they? Why should we care? How can they help? What ways, the goods, the bad, all the difference? Because I know Dr. Betsy and myself have had, like a personal weight loss story with the beautiful use of peptides and what they're good for and what who shouldn't because they're not a magic bullet, just like anything out there right now. And they have their 10 commandments that everybody should follow along with in order to be safe and healthy. But we'll dive deeper into that when we come back. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.
There's a new word for wellness, Nikki. Nikki is your personal wellness companion, a sleek wearable device that lets you choose from a variety of programs to match your day. With a simple tap on the Nikki screen, you can explore wellness programs created for different moments and lifestyles. From busy mornings to quiet evenings, Nikki puts a variety of wellness experiences right at your fingertips and on your wrist. Life moves fast. Nikki moves with you. It's a portable way to bring wellness technology into your everyday routine, wherever life takes you. Your day, your choice, your wellness program. Nikki Wellness Technology. Delivering frequency enhanced health. We are Nikki.com.
Fantastic. Welcome back. Let's dive a little deeper into peptides. And did you want, is there a specific kind of peptides we're talking about, or we're just talking about them in general, or
Let's
what is
talk
it?
about them in general, and then I can sprinkle some of my favorite in there.
Okay,
So,
fantastic. So we use this word often, but I don't think a whole lot of people still understand what is a peptide.
yeah, so technically, all the things around us, like protein, it's easier to go proteins. Proteins are made up of a bunch of amino acids. So amino acids are the building blocks. You put a bunch of amino acids together, you develop a protein. In between an amino acid, the building block, and the protein is a peptide. So a peptide, all it is a smaller group of amino acids stuck
Mm.
together. Okay, so what does that mean and why do we care? So a lot of those peptides now act as messengers in the body. So they naturally occur in our body and they are just kind of floating around and they're almost like hormones, but not quite. But they're acting like messengers and they're telling the body to do different things. So that's where this idea of peptides, it's basically something that naturally occurs. They're there, they've always been there, but they've gotten really popular more so around just prior to the pandemic. So prior to 2020 is really when they started to explode. A lot of the compounding pharmacies were carrying them. I think a lot of practitioners were starting to incorporate them. And then something happened in the United States where the FDA said, nope, no, we need to look into these things. They probably need to be regulated. We don't know if they're drugs. So they shut down all the compounding pharmacies. And so over the last couple of years, they've been slowly creeping back. But it's so interesting to me because they've been around for a while. I've been using them since probably about 2020, if not before that. Um, but like in the last year, I think they finally hit the mainstream conversation. And so I think the biohackers have kind of known about it. The bodybuilders have known about it way before the medical community. I mean, bodybuilders have been using peptides forever
Hmm.
as a way to kind of, build up their bodies and biohack. I think bodybuilders were biohacking before biohacking was even a term. So, and now all of a sudden it's like everywhere you go, like that's the new thing. I think it's gonna, it's going through its phase. I remember like years ago, CBD was like the new thing, and everybody looked at CBD was going to be the cure for everything. And now we're like, all right, CBD is good for some things, it's not for others. Same thing, peptides, I think, have more ability for improving the body because they just have to like identify all the different peptides. I mean, I think they're up to a couple hundred that are identified how they're used in the body. So it's going to give us like a little bit more of a tool than just CBD, but it's going through it's new and exciting phase right now where everybody thinks like, oh, well, I'll just do peptides and that's just going to fix everything. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
usually the first thing I tell the clients that I work with is, there's no magic bullet. Like especially with the weight loss stuff, you
Oh,
can't just continue to eat the way that you do. You have to, lift weights. You have to make sure you get enough protein in. This is not a magic bullet. Granted, it helps people like me who have been metabolically compromised for 30 years because of Lyme disease, mold toxicity, autoimmune, my poor body, and then menopause,
yeah.
right? My poor body was like, that's it, I give up. Like, I'm trying to keep you alive. I'm not worried about you losing weight, but especially during 2020, the comorbidities that go along with that, and then the pain that I was getting on my joints from being overweight and I couldn't take it anymore. And so, being the functional practitioner that I was, I felt really guilty. Like I should be able to figure this out. And is nothing working? And it just didn't, because like I said, I was just too metabolically compromised. So I had my foundation in place, and then I started using the peptides, and I used them correctly and low and slow. And it took me 8 months to lose 50 pounds, so it wasn't this overnight crap from Ozempic that's happening and the people are muscle wasting, and we'll get deeper into that. But
Yeah.
they're not a magic bullet. They're great tools, right, to help people, but we gotta dial in the foundations. So let's talk about some of your favorite peptides and kind of what they're used for. And also let's talk about the differences of like Ozempic compared
Yeah.
to retatrutide or something along those lines. Let's start there.
Yeah, you know what? I'll go my favorite. My favorite probably one is BPC 157. So why I like that one? It's called Body Protective Complex 157. It's naturally produced in the gastric juices, so it's naturally produced in the stomach. Now, what they're doing when they make it into a supplement version is it's a much more concentrated version. And so it has tremendous abilities to heal the gut, and it can heal joints and ligaments and tendons. Why I like it is one of the few that you can take orally versus having to inject it. So I think, and it's one that really we haven't seen the problems with it getting on the market in a supplement form. There's been a lot of companies that have been able to get it out there. So I it's one of my favorite because it's easy. I find that patients don't tend to be as adverse in using it because they don't have to worry about doing a daily injection or a weekly injection. And we're using it for gut microbiome healing. We're using it for ligaments and tendons. It works better you can inject it. It works better if you inject it into a joint or tendon to help with healing, but not necessarily.
Hmm.
Um, so there's also like a whole bunch that you can use from the beauty standpoint. A lot of the copper peptides, and you're seeing them actually getting into the mainstream over the counter products too, because you'll see a lot of companies that'll be like containing peptides or advanced peptides, but the copper peptides can really help the skin with wrinkling and help rejuvenation. There's another one called BTD, which I like for scalp, for hair. You can use the copper peptides for hair, but you can also, BTD is actually going to help with hair growth as opposed to the copper peptides help with more of hair maintenance. So there's tons of them, but going to the weight loss, and I think that's probably why people are very familiar with peptides because semaglutide, which is Ozempic, is a peptide. And so it's considered a first generation peptide. So the good news was it was one of the first ones we were really using commercially. Interesting enough, I've always wondered how it came out as a drug because technically in the past, you're not allowed to patent things that naturally occur in the body. So I haven't really figured out the loophole of how that became a commercial drug, but we do know that that is one of the cases now. And it was one of the first that was out there. So it was being used initially for insulin because it helped with insulin resistance and diabetes so it was really great. And then they realized that the patients that were taking it were actually starting to lose weight. So there was actually one prior to that that was orally, but it just didn't get as much popularity. Was liraglutide. So liraglutide was being used for diabetes and also had that side effect of weight. You just didn't see people dropping the weight as much as they did with Ozempic. I think why the Ozempic and those medicines became really popular is because of internet rumors and social media with the Kardashians. I think even Elon Musk, some of the weight loss that they had was attributed to these medicines. So I think that's really why they took off. But
Mm.
one of the problems that we see with any of those medicines is the side effects. And so you can get, nausea, vomiting, not always the greatest. That's why like the dosing has to be like super low for a month and then you got to go up. So it can take, from a weight loss standpoint, which is really interesting because I teach a lot of weight loss classes, is that it can take 3 or more months to get up to a level of the medicine where you may actually start losing weight. So you can actually potentially diet and exercise over 3 months and almost have, be at the same place. So it's not like, I think the frustration standpoint is that people think like, oh, I'm going to inject this and overnight it's going to work. I mean,
Right.
even knowing this, when I tried them, like, I remember my first week and I got on the scale and like nothing had changed. And I'm like, like nothing is working. Why am I going through this? But, it does take a while, but there's so many more effects for the GLPs than just they decrease. It slows down the gastric movement so that you feel full longer. I know one of the great side effects that they weren't reporting at first, which was something that I experienced, was decreasing of food noise. Like I
Oh,
never
huge.
realized myself how obsessed I was with food and how I was constantly thinking about food until I tried that medicine and all of a sudden it was like, wait, like my brain went quiet. It was like I didn't even know that existed. So, but and some people do really really well on the Ozempic, the semaglutide. But some people, it just doesn't work. We do know that these medicines on a whole also have other anti-aging side effects, which are great. They're muscle protective, there's some brain protection, there's kidney protection, there's lung protection. So we do know that there are some other health benefits of these medicines. um, the other thing was we just don't know the long-term effects, so that's another potential problem. We don't really know the long-term effects because it hasn't really been out that long. But when Ozempic came out, very soon after that, tirzepatide came out, which is Zepbound I always get them confused. Monjaro or Wegovy, I think.
Wegovy.
Yeah, yeah. So tirzepatide, it's a GLP. We call them it's a two because it says GLP and GIP, and so basically it works just like semaglutide, but then there's an added effect to it. So it has an added effect on body sugar and maintenance, and so the thoughts are in research it may work a little better, but once again, these medicines are not without their side effects and without, they don't work on everybody. And then retatrutide, which is not officially out yet, though there's places people can get it online. That's considered a third generation because it has three effects. It has the GLP-1, it has the GIP, and it has an effect on gluconeogenesis. Big words. Basically, you don't get as much issues with muscle loss with the third generation, because that was one of the problems with the first two, is that people were losing weight but they're also losing muscle, and muscle is a metabolically active tissue. So how do we actually lose more weight? We got to build more muscle. So now you're taking a medicine that's actually making you potentially lose muscle. So when people were going off the medicine, not only were they gaining weight, but they were affecting their metabolism and gaining then some. So they were gaining a lot more. So the idea with the retatrutide is that it has some muscle protection. And interesting enough, there's like 30 different weight loss medicines that are in the pipeline. So I think pretty soon we're going to be looking back on these and be like, do you remember when Ozempic came out? Can you
Do you
believe
remember
people took
Ozempic
that?
face?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the other thing. with the weight loss, you can't control where you're losing the weight. So, from an aesthetic standpoint, our fat in our cheeks is what's holding our face up partially and giving us that, like, nice kind of plumpness. When we take that away, we start getting more jowling. We get an age look to the face. You have Ozempic butt, where people are getting like droopy butt, but then they're also getting Ozempic vulva. So they're losing fat
Oh,
pads in the vulva, and so sexual activity can sometimes be more uncomfortable because you're losing that fat padding.
oh,
So,
geez. Yeah. Never thought
yeah.
about that. I mean,
Yeah.
I was lucky enough where I got straight on retatrutide. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it really helped. The side effects were minimum, only for a couple of weeks, some nausea. And then that, like I said, the food noise that I didn't even, and then even when that was happening, I didn't know it was happening until I was watching a documentary on The Biggest Loser. And one of the biggest losers on there talked about the food noise. And I was like, food noise, that's what, holy crap. Yes, that's what it is. And, all the dieting, all the best supplements, everything in the world, and even a lot of the trauma work that I did wasn't able to turn off. I still don't understand where that comes from and what that mechanism is that turns it off, but I just was grateful, right, as well, because it's amazing how much bandwidth that takes up when you're constantly fighting this urge to eat.
Yeah, I agree. And like I did it myself, and it was like it's something I didn't know exist until it wasn't there anymore. And then I was like, holy moly, this is great. I'm not waking up and thinking about what am I eating next. Like what is the next thing I'm gonna I'm not like looking for food. So it was good. I unfortunately did not get any results from any of the medicines so far.
Oh,
I did tirzepatide for a year and got all the way up to the second highest dosing, so which is very frustrating to look around and watch everybody else getting skinny, and I too really was like, I'm not going to do this. I can do it healthy. I just need to balance my gut microbiome and exercise. And I did that. I had balanced my gut microbiome. I was exercising. I was sleeping. I was doing everything minus probably stress. I mean, it's either one of two things when people don't respond to those medicines. It's either cortisol and stress, or there is a small population of people, there's about 10% of the population that doesn't have an enzyme that allows you to use those medicines. So
mm.
there's some people it just doesn't work on.
Is there a way to
So,
test for that to find
what,
out?
they don't, that I know of, and I've been looking for that. So
Because
it's
yeah,
kind of a
God,
little
how
bit
amazing would
more.
that be to save people's time and money just to be able to test and go, yeah, this isn't going to work for you.
I know they should. I'm sure it'll come out soon because it's only been really as more of an academic type of research tool as opposed to a commercially available testing. So yeah, that's the one thing that's super frustrating. So
Unfortunately, when the FDA took a lot of stuff away and people were getting really great results, you always have companies that are going to go out there and do stuff. There, I've seen an MLM. I was involved with a company that ships all over the world, and unfortunately, when I asked them about the side effect of the retatrutide and the constipation, and they're like, "That's not a side effect of retatrutide, and we've been doing this for 20 years." And I went, that's absolute BS. And I now have no credibility with you at all anymore. Like you did say a lot of the right things in the beginning, but that was just flag on the play. Like you can't tell me that it doesn't have side effects because that's just false advertising. So how do you know you're getting something safe? What are the things that you should look for when you're researching these companies or are these medicines?
yeah, I have to say it was so much easier when physicians could get them or practitioners could get them from compounding pharmacies because then you like really trusted it. But yeah, not a regular person couldn't get it. So the other things is that there are a lot of companies online and they've popped up pretty much. They've been there all along, but now they popped up like overnight because everyone realizes like peptides, we can make money. So I think the worst place you can get it is I'm seeing things showing up on Amazon. Like they're
Oh,
selling peptides on, like, please don't buy them on Amazon. Here's the problem: if you don't buy from a reputable source, you don't know. Even supplements, you don't know what you're getting. You don't know what it's contaminated with. There could be heavy metals. There could be bacteria. You don't know. So when it comes to the commercial available companies, what I look for when I'm getting them for myself, or technically unofficially, I'm not supposed to be giving them to patients, but there may be a very extensive um, consent process that they might be available. But what I'm looking for in those companies is ones that third party test. And so there are a couple companies that are out there that what they do is they get the peptides, they send the peptides to another testing laboratory facility to test the batches, to test them for purity. And they will publish, they either have their results accessible or they'll publish them online. And so they tend to go with those companies over these kind of fly by night ones that just are popping up and you're like, I don't even know. Peptides are us. I don't even know peptides are us even exist. I'm like, I don't want to like throw them. You don't want to just get them from anywhere.
No, absolutely,
But
absolutely.
like comparing this to CBD, that's what happened with CBD. Like at one point, it was like all of a sudden you could find CBD like gas stations. And
Well, and
like,
they were even there was a huge research story about they tested like 8 different brands of CBD on Amazon, and only one of them had CBD in it. Like that, I mean, that's the horrible part to it. In like Mexico here too, you were having a hard time finding bacterial water, which is keeping things sterile because if you continue to inject yourself from the same vial, you're not wanting to grow bacteria in that vial. You need things to be sterile.
yeah, yeah. And the thing is that we don't have the research on some of this stuff. And then, some of the peptides. So, what I like, a good number of the peptides are what are called secretagogues. And what it does is it makes you secrete more of your own human growth hormone. Because
Mm.
as we age, human growth hormone goes down, and that kind of adds to some of the aging process, some of the fatigue, some of the muscle loss, all the symptoms we get starting after the age of 40 and magnifying as we age. Human growth hormone, other than for medical reasons, is illegal in the United States. The people still do it, but the problem if you take human growth hormone directly, you're suppressing your own production of it. But if you take a secretagogue, it's a peptide that gets you to secrete your own. You don't typically affect your own production. So that's what I like with some of those. The downside of these are, and a lot of them one of the side effects is they help to build muscle. So sometimes this is actually really good if you stack them with the weight loss ones. You can be the things to help suppress the appetite, but then you stack them with some of the ones that help you build muscle. One of my favorites is CJC 1297 because it's a once a week, or it's CJC 1297 with DAC. DAC is a ingredient that they put into it. It makes it a once a week injection.
Mm.
But that one works better if you combine it with one called ipamorelin. When you put them together, they work really nicely in synergy to help build muscle. But even then, it's not an overnight success, and you can't sit around on a couch doing nothing and inject yourself and expect to come out looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger, in his heydays. It's just not going to happen. And it's going to take like 3 to 6 months to see, combining it with exercise to see difference. But, will you get there a little bit quicker than if you were doing it by yourself? Yes. And I think the other thing with these peptides is you're not meant to be on them indefinitely. It's one of these things where you're supposed to be depending on which ones you're using, it's a cycling. Because here's the thing with human growth hormone, there's another, we can't really directly measure it, but we can actually measure IGF-1, and it's insulin growth factor 1, which is an indirect measurement of human growth hormone. And we can look at those levels, and there's tables out there on, you can find them out on online, what your levels should be based on your age and your gender. And so we do know that those levels come down over time. So the idea is to keep them within a range of somebody maybe younger. But the problem is IGF-1 is too high, there's a risk of cancer. If it's too low, there's a risk of cancer. It's like Goldilocks. So this is why, like with the peptides, yes, it helps to increase that level, but we don't want to be doing it indefinitely because we don't want to necessarily increase the risk of cancer. And that's the other thing is these a lot of times act like growth hormones. A lot of these things are promoting, tissue growth or muscle growth or hair growth or skin growth, and if there is some sort of like little cancer there, and now we're kind of pumping it through peptides, we could be feeding cancer. So it's not like that, this is the perfect kind of product and it's going to keep you young forever. There's screening that needs to be done with these. They have to be done in a way that we're cycling them, and even then there is still potentially, and it's not like they're causing cancer. It's like if there is a cancer that's there, it could potentially feed it. So same kind of issue we see with hormones. I mean, hormones by themselves aren't typically in balance causing cancer, but if a cancer happens, because we make cancer cells sometimes, and our immune system should take care of it, but sometimes the immune system is stressed and doesn't do its job, and then you don't want to be doing anything. And that's why I think doing peptides with a practitioner that understands how to use it is the better way than just, I'm going to buy this stuff like on some random website and have it show up to my house and inject it, and I don't know why.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I work with a qualified company clinic here in Puerto Vallarta because, like I said, I tried to do the over the counter the mail stuff, and I just couldn't find anybody that was doing anything legit. And I'm not a doctor, and I just didn't want to take on that responsibility when I was working with people because it's not side effect free, right? There are
Yeah.
consequences to it. And even with someone like myself with a background of autoimmune and a background of cancer in the family, like there is a screening that should be done, and you gotta, and yeah, and if you're not a doctor, like I said, I really don't think you should be trying to just take this on yourself. So thank you for bringing that part into it. So we're at the end here. Tell us a little bit about like how can somebody work more with you and find out more about peptides and how do you work and all that fun stuff.
Sure. So you can come find me at pauseinstitute.com. So that is my practice. So you can find it there. Also, I have my own podcast called 40s Forward. So we haven't brought up peptides, but maybe I will. And then follow me on social media.
Thank you. We'll have everything in the show notes. Also to make sure to visit BioBeats. I can't talk all of a sudden. wearenikki.com/podcast and enter in BioBeats to get 10% off your Nikki. And because the way we show appreciation, we give away a Nikki device, as well as some other beautiful things once a month on every show. So you're going to want to make sure to go to the show notes to enter. Good luck. Make sure that you're liking, subscribing, and sharing, and stay tuned. Have a healthy day.
Nikki Wellness Technology. Delivering frequency enhanced health.
It looks like a little watch, but it's actually a frequency device. It's bioenergetic, so it has this little frequency light situation that goes into your arm.
This is my Nikki. It is a bioenergetic wearable that works by emitting a specific frequency carried by a red light, as you can see on the back. It's aimed at enhancing the body's natural healing process to improve wellness and reducing stress, pain, and inflammation. And to select a frequency, you tap it to wake it up, and then you slide to the screens that list the different frequencies. I have wellness or Lyme on mine. So if we want to pick one, we just tap on it, and you'll see the circles around, and there's a play button, play areas, tap there, and you can see the colors radiating that show that it's playing, and you would also see the red light on the back. And to stop, you just tap it again, and then you can slide and select a different frequency. I'm going to play afternoon, and you just tap, and away you go for your afternoon.
So they're two different things. You have the Nikki device, and then you have the frequency sets. And so right now they have the wellness frequencies, and they are absolutely incredible. So I absolutely love them.
Nikki Wellness Technology. Delivering frequency enhanced health. wearenikki.com. The views, information, and opinions expressed in this content are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Free Medica. Premedica Technologies Inc. and its employees are not responsible, nor verifies accuracy any of the information contained in the following content. The primary purpose of this content is to educate and inform. This content does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services.